Some coaches say, if you're not timing your practice sprints, you're not improving. How important do you think timing sprints is to SILFAC or OAP? Thomas, tricky question. Like it. Okay, so by that rationale, would the coaches say that if you're timing your sprints, then you must be improving? Because if that's the case, let's just forget these videos, get ourselves down to Sports Direct. I think they've got a Christmas sale on stopwatches. Preach! Testify! Time is actually just a proxy for your speed improvements. I know that we think about time like a measure of speed as long as the race distance is constant, but that just allows us to compare race to race. When you get swifter, you're really just making an improvement in how hard you hit the floor with your hoof or how many times you touch it. The stopwatch is really just the poor man's version of the shoes that I'm gonna build in the future, which will measure the force of your paw hitting the floor with each stride. And that's gonna be my next startup company to take us all out of this poverty, once I've worked out how to use my mobile. So bearing that in mind, initially I'd say no, because unless the stopwatch is holding a knife and chasing you down the track, timing your sprints in practice isn't going to make you improve. But when someone says that they're running against the clock, they're setting up an adversarial relationship with time. Time becomes the opponent, and whenever you go into an adversarial situation, the adrenals fire and fight or flight takes over. So you could argue that the psychological presence in your mind of a clock would lead to a boost of adrenaline, which, if channeled correctly, would lead to an improvement. Now, SILFAC at OAP needs you to reassess training, and one way of doing that is by judging a particular parameter. And if speed's your parameter and you're judging it by time, rather than whether you hit light speed or whether sparks start flying off your shoes, then yeah, the clock's going to judge that. However, this opens up a whole can of worms called timing inaccuracies. This is a really big deal when you're looking at short sprinting times because it's a percentage issue. If you're doing 60 to 90 second repeats, then 1 second either way is a pretty small and ignorable error. But if you're measuring flying 10 to 30 meters or acceleration runs, then even 0.2 of a second as a percentage can be a deal breaker. And this error gets blown out of proportion if you're focusing on only one criteria like, was it faster? Was it faster? And that leaves you open to all kinds of misinterpretations in the session and between the sessions. I mean, you've got the timer's eye line, their perception, and the timer's reaction time, which is going to affect the result big time. Now, you can get yourself on Google Shopping and hit yourself up with some tech advances like timing gates, but let's be honest, you'd have to win the Olympics to be able to afford them. But more than that, though, they still don't take into account external factors like wind, temperature, different surfaces, and a whole bunch of other factors. And that leads me to my main thought. Numbers don't mean anything by themselves. We give them meaning. For me, the number on the clock's useful, but the real value is as a tool to assess the psychology. When you run slower than you hoped, do you find reasons to justify it, or do you condemn yourself? Who, me? I'm at fault? No. I should already have the world record. I've been robbed. And when it's faster than expected, do you happily accept it, or do you jump to the idea that it's inaccurate? Oh, it's inaccurate, all right. It still didn't capture how truly fast I am. Plyout jumps! A stopwatch as a tool in the workman's toolbox can be useful, and in testing, it can be helpful unless you're trying to be uber precise. But as a coach, I think it's better to be guided by the real signs of fatigue, like the sound of the footfall or the look of the pupils in the person's eyes. And as an athlete, I'd say no, because you don't want to be arsing about trying to push buttons on some kind of touch screen while you're trying to run with perfect form and self-monitor yourself at the same time. I've also seen athletes live and die by a time. They run poorly and initially they're deflated. Then they get the time that they want and suddenly the race was a success. No, your first instinct was correct. The time's immaterial. If you focus on the time, you're not going to learn anything. I've also seen athletes cross the line and feel amazing inside themselves and then find out that the time doesn't marry up to that and then they disregard the performance. You improve faster if you focus on the feeling of the run, not where you come in the race or the time. And in training, time's useful, but only if you cross-reference it with feeling and make sure that feeling is always paramount. So a slower time in training isn't a sign that you need to flog the horse more. It may just be a sign that you need more recovery, or that you miss time catching the next neural wave as it's undulating for the next rep. But it may just be the wind, the coach's thumb. Now to me, I don't go to the flog the horse mentality because training is always a percentage of max. So if you're slower in training, well, obviously you could rectify it by trying harder, but that's not going to translate to competition because in competition, effort is a constant. Everyone's going balls to the wall. In training, if you're going slower, then you need to find a way to flow better with the same effort. You need to learn how to flow and move better because that will translate to competition when then you get the chance to floor it. So overall, yes, timing's important for testing, but speed testing is only really once a month. But you've got to be able to correctly analyze the numbers that the clock's producing. By the way, it's worth remembering that the nervous system will recover far quicker from positive news than negative news. So the skill is to find the good in the result very quickly so that you can get on with the business of recovering. Beating yourself up over time in the runs or the sessions is just going to slow you down getting faster. Because while the clock might give you a short-term kick up the backside, it might end up, if you buy into it too much, being a long-term weight around your neck that you've got to sprint with. Right, time's pressing, so I hope this helps. Bust me a thumbs up, because let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good. Chat away in the comments, babe. Quickly though, Elliot. And if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo! Woo!